Hello, everyone. Welcome to Am Yisrael Thrive. I'm Shayna with.
Jen, where thriving is our resistance. How is everybody?
Yes, and we're so happy to have Jen back with us as well too. You were gone for a little while. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, just a lot of things happening. I moved. I was involved in there was a minor car accident, had to get a total brand new car. End of the school year, there were budget cuts, so there were a lot of teaching positions that were unfortunately cut. So trying to deal with that. And then I finished one of my reading specialist kind of certificates. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm so thankful that Shayna, gave me like the opportunity to have a little grace period to just kind of get through all the hectic and craziness. But we made it through the other side and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, the rainbow, and I'm glad to be back. So
Well, I have to say, does your new place have a backyard or something? Because I saw your little video where you were like for Netflix. It's like, that's so cute.
I wish we do have a little porch area. This is at my best friend's during the summer. This is like my super happy place where I get to be in New Jersey and get to be with my best friend. So that's her backyard. That I live vicariously through her. That I have this amazing place and backyard. So, but yeah,
I was gonna live vicariously through you. I was like, I want to come to visit your backyard.
well, I'm hoping maybe in Israel you'll have some sort of backyard, front yard, and I'm going to come visit you, and we'll broadcast from there.
Absolutely.
How are you?
So things have been okay with me. I will say this. I hit a little, so the good news is that I got my visa in hand to make my aliyah to Israel. And then right after that, I was told when I was trying to get my flight booked by Nefesh B'Nefesh that my FBI background check that has to get sent to Washington, D.C. to get apostilled. And that takes 5 weeks to do before they'll book my flights. And so that got sent off last week. But I'm just like, man, it just like was like one barrier after another from me to get there. But you know what? It strengthens my resolve. And the harder the universe makes something for me to get, the more I'm going to go after it. And then the sweeter it's going to be when I finally get there, I feel like.
And so when are you thinking of actually being able to move to Israel?
September, October is what I'm looking at right now. And so half my apartment's gone. Y'all can't see anything right now. This is a fake apartment behind me.
I actually would never have. So there you go. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Oh, yes. But let's get into some of the things that have been going on this week. My first thing I'd like to talk about is clavicular in Israel. Thoughts?
Okay, so I'm so glad that you said his name because I was mispronouncing it in my head this entire time. I kept saying it as clavicular, and that's not right. Like that's who because I think of the clavicle bone, and in my mind, I thought that's what his name was.
My autocorrect, whenever I type his name, it corrects it to either clavicles, or like clavicle. And so like I've just been letting it stay like calling him clavicles. I'm like, I don't care.
Everything, and I've been saying this a lot, everything that I've ever learned about this particular person has been against my will. I had no idea what look maxing was. I had no idea about this man. He hit his face with a hammer to beautify his face. Like I have no idea what is going on. But yes, I would like to say now that I've been seeing his videos in Israel, we can't be pick me Jews. I'm going to say it. You're trying to, be cool and let's bring this influencer in and I'm going to he gave him some sort of like bio watch or I don't know, some sort of gadget. And I'm like, man, he like made fun of October 7th and you're groveling to him. Why? Because you want his approval, you want his followers, but is this the best way to go about it? That's my take. And again, I don't know much about him other than that.
Oh, no. I actually know a lot about him because I am addicted to YouTube videos and I've seen YouTube videos about him. So first off, he's only 20 years old, okay? And he started doing this weird stuff with like hitting his face in the hammer and injecting himself with testosterone at 14 years old.
Actually,
14.
That breaks my heart. You know, being being in behavioral science and mental health and being a teacher, like this just screams like
he has diagnosed autism as well too, he said. And that kind of checks out when you look at his behavior. Like he's incredibly, so he's been posting these videos. First, he humiliated himself in Paris because he's a huge misogynist as well too. And one of his whole things is humiliating women. And so he was talking about how he was going to like own and mog. That's the weird term they use for own is mog. Like all these Parisian women on the streets, and they were just completely rejecting him. And then there was this hilarious video where he tried to mog or humiliate like this woman in Tel Aviv, and the title on the video was clavicular, owns Tel Aviv baddie. And when I saw the video, it was her just completely berating him and taking him down a notch. So it's like his own.
Watch that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, And I have to say, like, all these Israeli men tripping over themselves to ingratiate themselves to such a misogynist, where that goes completely against our culture, is ridiculous.
And again, at the end of the day, a Jew is a Jew, and they're not going to differentiate. And you can be as obliging as you possibly can to get their validation or whatever you're looking for, and it doesn't matter. And you may know more about this than I do, but there was someone in California who was in office, and he went to a pride parade, and they kicked him out, or he left because he was pro-Israel. But
Scott Wiener
is supporting their cause, but it's still that litmus test. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you don't pass that test.
Yep, that's a great point, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because So I remember in 2024, there was a pro-Israel march that Scott Wiener actually spoke at. And so I thought he was on our side. And then when I saw him walk it back and finally capitulate to the far left in the Democratic Party here in California, it really genuinely broke my heart. And it was difficult for me to watch him, get confronted, just because as a Jew, that's happened to me. Like I was literally beaten by a group of people. So like, that's kind of where I thought it was going to go. And I'm glad for his sake, it didn't go there. And you could see the fear in his eyes, and I hope that Jewish politicians see that fear in his eyes and do not make the same mistakes that he's made.
Exactly. And I think this also leads into one of the current news stories is Graham Plattner leaving the Senate race. But it really highlights, and I've made comments about this earlier, that, the red line, like anti-Semitism is so prevalent in the Democratic Party now. And it seems like the excuses were made for his Nazi tattoo. And that wasn't a red line for a lot of Democrats, and they hitched their ride. Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, no. I was talking to our guest behind the scenes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, but that goes into it though, because we can just kind of go there. So our guest today is Marjan Greenblatt from ARAM, which stands for the Alliance for Rights for All Minorities. And she's also married to Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL as well too. So let's go ahead and welcome to the stage Miss Marjan Greenblatt Kippur. How's it going today, Marjan?
Hi, Shayna. Hi, Jane. It's a pleasure to be with you, ladies. I was listening to your conversation, and right on. What is going on?
Right, that's what we're all saying, I think. What is indeed going on in the world?
Yeah, really, what happened to our country? What happened to our values? How do we end up here?
I'm so glad that you said it, Marjan, because that's exactly what I've been feeling, just all around. If living in 2026 feels like living in an alternate timeline to me.
I agree. And I think that there is a world that has been created thanks to social media for a large part that is just ugly and toxic and pitting people against each other. And I think in the process, I think we have forgotten who we are and what we actually care about.
Agreed. Agreed completely. Now, Marjan, you are the founder for ARAM, the Alliance for the Rights of All Minorities. For those that are unaware, can you share with us a little bit about what your organization does?
Sure. I started to be involved in the world of advocacy for human rights in Iran about 12 years ago, right around the time of the JCPOA. And at the time, the voices that were advocating for the rights of Iranian people were disjointed and not very organized. There were definitely pockets of activism, in some cases, strong activism, but there were communities that were marginalized, and those were the diversity of Iran's religious and cultural ethnic diversity in the country. So those minorities were left out of the conversation. And as a Jewish person born and raised in Iran, who had witnessed actually what it is like not only to be a religious minority in Iran, but to also have the double whammy of being a female and a minority, I thought that I had a unique perspective that was omitted from a lot of the conversations, and that propelled me to connect with a network of other activists I knew from representing different religious backgrounds, different cultural and language backgrounds inside Iran, as well as the diaspora. And we created a network that has been working on reporting human rights violations that have been taking place in Iran, perpetrated or tolerated by the Iranian regime, and holding the government accountable. And then just to add to that, about 5 years ago, we started to monitor cases of femicide that were taking place in Iran. And these are gender-based acts of murder against women and girls. Some were perpetrated by family members and acquaintances of the victims, and some perpetrated by the government of Iran. Most notably, the murder of Mahsa Amini is a government-related act of femicide. So we have also that initiative going on, and we publish an annual report documenting some of the most horrific crimes against women and girls that you would see.
Wow. My mother is obviously we're all Jewish, but she actually married a man from Iran and lived in Iran in the 70s, and she taught English for the Shah's Imperial Army during that time, and she had to flee when the 1979 revolution was coming. Her in-laws said, it's not going to be safe, get out, go. And she and her first husband, they went back, and still now we are not in touch with a lot of his family members right now. It's still very silent. So my heart goes out to the diaspora, to everyone that's there right now dealing with all of this. But you bring a point here. What are some misconceptions that Western audiences have about ordinary Iranians? And, what can we learn, especially with the news going on and surrounding Iran right now?
Before I talk about the misconceptions, I want to just recognize that the Iranian people and freedom-loving people around the world today have lost a strong ally and friend in Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Senator Graham is someone who actually understood the Iranian people beyond all the misconceptions that are prevalent in the American and English language media. Senator Graham really understood the difference between the Iranian people and the government that is repressing them, silencing them. He recognized the threat that some activists and some media sources with agendas were trying to do in order to portray a picture that was far from the reality of Iran and what the Iranian people actually want. And he really was willing to actually put the work into it. He put a lot of elbow grease into supporting the Iranian people, as well as the Israeli people, as well as the Ukrainians. because he saw that there is an interconnection in democracy, that when you're supporting a democracy in one part of the world, you're actually strengthening the democratic values here in America. And he was willing to do that. And he was a champion who was committed to doing that. But unfortunately, we lost him. One last thing about Senator Graham was that there is an iconic moment about Lindsey Graham and the Iranian people. And it was a picture that was captured on February 14th of this year when he attended a massive rally of Iranian people in the diaspora in Munich. It was pouring rain, inclement weather, awful conditions, but there were 250 Iranian people bearing the flag of their country, the original flag with the lion and the sun. They were bearing the flag of United States and Israel and also the countries they were coming from, because the Iranian people respect the countries where they are living. And they chanted, as soon as he took to the stage, they chanted, USA, USA. And the love for him was so deep that on social media, affectionately, the Iranian users started to call him Uncle Lindsey, Amu Lindsey. So there is a deep loss in our hearts. We are really going to miss Senator Graham. It will be very difficult to replace an ally like him.
I didn't realize that he was such a strong supporter of Iran, and that Iranians felt this way. And just for anyone that doesn't know, Senator Lindsey Graham actually kind of died mysteriously. Is that correct, you guys?
It was just a very sudden illness, is what the family has put out. He was just in Kiev the day before, pledging, his support to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people and putting more sanctions on Russia. So, yeah.
It kind of makes me feel like it was maybe a political assassination or something like that, but I don't know.
So maybe this brings us back to the difference, to some of the misconceptions about the Iranian people. Number one is that there's a difference between the Iranian people and the government that is representing them. The Iranian people are allies of America, are the allies of Israel, allies of democratic, loving people anywhere in the world, because they want freedom. They know deeply what it is like not to have the freedom that allows us to thrive and prosper. That's why they're fighting for it. And this is exactly the reason why the government tries so hard to repress that. And by controlling the media, by sending their the messengers around the world to represent their own talking points, and while silencing the Iranian people by shutting down the internet for nearly 200 days.
Yes, one of the things that I've actually been really disappointed in my own countrymen here in America is everyone's talking about, the Strait of Hormuz and gas prices, but no one's talking about the dozens upon dozens. I've heard numbers going from 40,000 to 100,000 that Iranians that were murdered by their own government just for protesting, and majority children last September while the internet was down. And I can't even imagine how that could make Iranians feel.
Devastated, unheard, and betrayed. Absolutely. One of the reasons that, in addition to the massacre that took place on over 2 nights, over probably less than a total of 10 hours, murdering 40,000 plus innocent souls. And these are all names that have been documented, people with ages, names, pictures, place of burial, everything. This is not data that is coming from the Hamas Health Ministry. This is all documented. And yes, it is believed to be much higher. But and in addition to that, they have been constantly executing protesters, many of them young protesters, sometimes executing as many as 3 people a day. Since January, over 1,000 people have been executed in Iran. And that is an underestimation. The second misconception about Iran is that the revolution in Iran or the ideals of the Islamic Republic are not Iranian. They are a concept that is uniquely revolutionary based on their own principles and understanding of Islam. And it is an concept that is transnational. When you've it has nothing to do with Iran. It has something to do with a global perspective and a global outreach and expansion and export of the revolution. For example, when you think about IRGC,
Mm.
what does I stand for? Does I stand for Iran? No. I stands for Islam, the Islamic Republic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So I is a transnational vision for where this movement needs to go, and the guardians of this movement across the board are supposed to expand it and promote it. When Khamenei was being buried, they used that moment as a massive tool for propaganda, and the American media easily bought into it, reporting on the mass number of people who came and mourned him, while they raised suspicion and scrutiny and questions about what happened at the massacre. They were so quick to accept the numbers that were coming from the Islamic Republic about how many people actually came to the funeral of a man who was hated by its own citizens. Whereas when we were documenting the deaths of innocent protesters on January 8th and 9th, the media was treating it with skepticism and scrutiny. So all of these things, that was my third misconception, that the American media reflects the perspective of the government and not the Iranian people, and that creates a very difficult dynamic for all of us.
My question is, I remember when Women Life Freedom was a huge global movement. I mean, talking about celebrities, talking about women, life, freedom, the world was rallying around the Iranian people. What changed in the span of several years to now? We're not seeing that response anymore of the people. We're seeing people support the IRGC. We see flags waving of the IRGC. Where did it go from supporting the people to now supporting this regime? It seems to me such a 180. How do you explain that? And how do we combat those strategies that the IRG is doing to use propaganda to manipulate others around the world?
The Women Life Freedom movement happened because what happened to Mahsa Amini was so egregious, and the way it was reported was so shocking that it got to the core of many of us. I can tell you, as someone who has been trying to echo the voices of Iranian people and reflect the human rights violations and violations against women's rights in Iran for the past 12 years, I can tell you that it has been very difficult. It was always very difficult to share those stories because it went counter to the narrative of the established English language media. They did not want to reflect those voices. They asked for evidence, for names, things that would actually compromise sources if I were to actually always provide them. And even if I did provide them, they still were very difficult about publishing or sharing the sources, or they would say this, but there's always a different side, but there's also the government says this. They would always, try to balance the report with also the government's perspective and justification for why they were committing those human rights violations. But with Mahsa Amini, it was undeniable. And I think that the mass of people who took to the streets and tried to reflect that movement, and it was such a beautiful feminist, unique movement that really brought inspiration and euphoria, I think, to many of us who are not Iranians. Nonetheless, the regime absolutely was threatened by it, and they deployed their bots and their activists and their surrogates to denigrate the people who were pushing for that on an advocacy level or in the diaspora. They engaged in character assassinations against every single person who was successfully engaging with European leaders, American leaders, trying to garner support for the Iranian people. They revealed awful lies, myths, even truths, but who cares? Those were, they try to denigrate and delegitimize the leaders and supporters, and by creating a division among the opposition abroad, little by little, the projection of the voices abroad outside of Iran fizzled out. But I will tell you, and I really believe it with all my heart, that the movement continued in Iran, that actually the Mahsa Amini movement was a tipping point that expanded activism and expanded awareness inside Iran. And the level of protests we saw in January 8th and 9th, was a result of the awakening and awareness that happened during the Mahsa Amini movement.
Yeah, I remember those protests back in January, and I remember the people of Iran chanting for Pahlavi to come back. And I have to say, like, in these last 6 months, it seems like President Trump maybe has not allowed him to have much of a say. Can you share with us what the Crown Prince's involvement has been, what the people would like from him, and what we can expect moving forward?
So it is hard to really understand what is the thought process for President Trump. But what I can tell you, as someone who has met with the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi multiple times, and I follow his work very closely, I can tell you that the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi has been in direct communication with Iranian people for decades. He has dedicated his life to advocacy and support for the Iranian people. He, unlike some of the other leaders who have emerged from media or from politics or from, celebrity culture in, different ways, he has always had one perspective. He was never a reform candidate or a reform activist becoming total opposition. He was never a hardliner suddenly changing positions. He was always an original patriot for Iran, and his position has never changed. And over the years, his activities and his support and engagement with the Iranian people has engaged significantly. You can see that by the level of engagement he had on social media with his people. And it was as a result of the direct call from him for people to take to the streets that people showed up on January 8th and 9th. And I know that he continues, and he has continued even since the massacre, since the perceived cold shoulder from certain leaders in the world, that he has still tried to fight. He has traveled to over 20 countries in the past 6 months. But what he said in a very heartbreaking message recently was that a lot of these leaders, they don't want to do much for the Iranian people. They're more comfortable keeping the status quo. And that unfortunately, the Iranian people are often left on their own, and they're asked to fight for themselves. But we know the vulnerability that they have against the military grade weapons and the imported militia that Iran brings in from Iraq, from Pakistan and Afghanistan, Syria, wherever the heck else, to repress and kill Iranian citizens. And I really wish that this could open the hearts and the minds and compassion level of ordinary American people that I know care about the value of other people's lives and do something to support the Iranian people beyond partisan politics. But unfortunately, um, it's a very difficult and isolating moment at the time.
What do you think should be the next step for the U.S. or Israel in regards to diplomacy with Iran or with the deals being made and ceasefires and so on and so forth? What do you think would be the best outcome, in your opinion?
I think that before we can achieve desirable outcomes, which would be giving sovereignty back to the Iranian people, giving the Iranian people the right to go to the ballot box and choose their leaders in a free and fair election, away from an establishment that filters and eliminates candidates systematically. In order to achieve that moment, which also would be a moment that could bring peace and stability to the region, it would be a moment that could actually calm the constant conflict that is paid for by the bots of the Islamic Republic and their communist friends around the world to create division and antagonism in America and to turn Americans against each other. So they don't have to do the dirty work. We are doing it against one another.
100.
I really believe that that could stop if the regime could be stopped and power would be given back to the Iranian people.
I completely agree with you. I have to say, I really believed that the IRGC was going to be toppled once we got involved this year. And I've been incredibly heartbroken that it has not. And in fact, we've heard American politicians such as Rahm Emanuel in Tel Aviv talk about limiting the Ayatollah's power. In my personal view, and I think in most Iranians' personal view, like you just said, the IRGC needs to be toppled and the people need to be able to choose their own government. Do you see that as being possible at this stage?
I think it is possible if we stop empowering the operators and militia that are ruling Iran right now. We need to stop negotiating with them, because when we negotiate with them, we legitimize them. When America legitimizes them, the rest of the world legitimizes them. That's why in 20 countries, it has been so hard to get allies, because they don't want, they could have an enemy in the Islamic Republic. They don't care so much, but they don't want to lose America as a friend. And when America treats the Islamic Republic like a normal diplomatic entity rather than the rogue dictatorship terrorist regime that it actually is, we lose our own values. We lose our own leverage. When we start to give them money, we give them tools to destroy. The money does not go to the Iranian people, no matter what they want to do with sending them corn and soy, which is totally things that are not in Iranian diet ever. When we give money to the Iranian people, to the Iranian government, money is fungible. They will use it on their missiles, on their drones, on proxies, and on the nuclear weapon. That is their long-term ambition. So these conversations need to stop. We need to stop fooling ourselves that this is that there are people who are better and more pragmatic. The Iranian regime has been playing the hardliner pragmatic game for a long time, because they know that the American audience likes to see politics as the two-side equation, a good side and a bad side. So they are constantly trying to construct and manufacture a duality in Iran about who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. And we'll send our good guys to talk to the Americans, and we will fight the bad guys. But in reality, they're all one entity engineered by a system of supreme Islamism that only is prioritizing an ideology that they want to export to the world, and has no regard for human rights of anyone. The case study is the human rights of what's people of people experiencing it in Iran, and that is a case study that will go around the world if we allow them to expand.
What could ordinary people listening today do to actually help the Iranians and actually make a tangible difference for those living there now? What could we do?
So there's something really interesting. There's like an underlying problem with how American citizens, and I've lived in America for 40 years, and I love America. I'm proud to be here. I take advantage of it. But there is a way that American people process politics, and I have traveled also around the world. But you see, when you sit in a cab in Iran, in Israel, in Europe, the cab driver knows a lot about politics. They have a keen understanding of what is going on, the dynamics, how it affects the economy, how it affects politics, how it affects people in different countries. They are well versed in what is going on. But an average American person, I don't mean to be rude, but for the average American person, what matters is the price of oil. And that is the main conclusion that they have about political dynamics around the world. And that is not enough. That is a very simplistic way to look at politics and to even look at the economy. The price of oil fluctuates, goes up and down, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But price of oil would be a lot lower if the region would be safe from people who are from the Hormuz mafia, who are trying to control the export of oil. And the way to manage this mafia is not to give them more money, is not to buy them out. The way to manage a mafia is to arrest the criminals and hold them accountable.
I completely agree.
So we need to think beyond some of those simple equations, and also we need to bring morality and patriotism back to America. We beyond partisan stupidity, we need to really think about what is it that we care about. Guys, our political parties, the Democratic and the Republican sides, are being taken over either by the Nazis or by the isolationists, by the Islamists or by the communists. It has taken 250 years to build this country. Let's not give up what we have established to those rogue fringe elements who are loud and violent, who want to take over. We need to take power back here in America for the moral middle, and create mutual understanding among people who share our values, no matter where they are around the world.
I couldn't agree more. I recently learned a word, entryism, talking about how Islamists and communists are basically infiltrating. They were talking about Democratic Party, but you could argue both sides as well, since we're seeing, both anti-Israel and, anti-Iranian sentiment sort of on both sides. This makes me really worry that we might have some kind of event here in America that happened similar to what happened in 1979 in Iran. What are your personal fears around both Islamists, and the DSA, getting more power in America here?
I have to tell you, the scenes we saw from the colleges and from streets in New York, not to mention also what we saw in Europe and Australia, they're very, very reminiscent of the scenes that we saw in the streets of Iran during the 1979 revolution. They were violent. Those were violent moments. Those were ideological moments. There were absolute perspectives on the streets. There was no middle ground. It was like, the Shah has to go, Khomeini has to come. It was violent. It was death to this, death to that from the beginning, and those death to America, death to Israel persist. They also had Marg Basha, death to the king, and And so many Iranian people regret those chants today. Nonetheless, the Shah of Iran, ironically, warned the world about the convergence of what he described, the convergence of red and black, the communists and the Islamists, that were uniting together against what they perceived to be an imperialistic, capitalistic Western enemy. The movement was, again, a transnational movement before it took ground inside Iran. But inside Iran, it actually became a test case, and it took shape in the form of the revolution that we saw. It was really the collaboration of the Islamists and the communists. And the chant was an unapologetic death to America, which is a symbol of imperialism and capitalism and Western values, and death to Israel, which is a symbol of anything that is not Islamic. So when they promoted that revolution inside Iran, they wanted it to expand here. And what we see today is a fruition, already is a fruition of some of the vision that they had at the time.
I'm just trying to think of what would be tangible steps to prevent this from happening. I know, speaking out and knowing more about politics instead of just, the gas prices and, but you can see it coming, but like, how do you stop it? It's the question I keep running through my head.
I know, and I think that we really have to address this question seriously. I think about it all the time, because I'm worried for America now. I'm not just worried about Iran anymore. I am also worried about America. And I think that we need to bring patriotism back to America, honest to God. I think we have to stop being ashamed of being American. I'm hearing stories about people going to 4th of July parties or going to Memorial Day parties and wearing like signs of American flag and being admonished for it in America by other Americans. Like, what happened? We need to make patriotism cool again. Patriotism is not partisanship. Patriotism is not worship or admiration of a single leader. Patriotism is about you. Patriotism is about us, is about we the people. And we need to make the American flag ours, an extension of our identity, of our proud. We need to make American name an extension of every individual, no matter what kind of hyphenated identity they come with, and make it a source of pride. What we do, how we prosper in America, is not just for our own prosperity, but it's also to create a better world for our neighbors, because America has always been a country that cares about the neighbors, not dissing the neighbors. We need to make patriotism cool again. And if there is a, stand up for the national anthem. Sing the national anthem, no matter what event you're organizing, just sing it and look at the flag and appreciate it. I really believe that we have to criminalize flag burning. I really think that, but some people think that I'm a radical for thinking it. They don't criticize the radicals who are actually burning flags, but I want to protect the American flag, and I think flag burning should be illegal. Just a parenthesis, flag burning makes sense in countries where there are no other democratic tools for people to advocate for policies that they want to have. But in America, we have a democratic process. We do have a democratic system and channels for representation. Just use them. It's a lot more productive and constructive to go and advocate for what you want instead of ceremoniously burning a flag so that you can get clicks on social media. For God's sakes, like.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I don't feel like I know a lot about, and maybe you can educate us. So
Mm.
who are the minorities inside of Iran that are being most impacted right now?
You know, Shayna, there was a time when we had to amplify the voices of people who were neglected, and those were the Christians, the Baha'is, the Zoroastrian people, the Jews, and so many Christian converts. By the way, Iran is one of the largest growth areas for conversions to Christianity and conversions out of Islam. That's a separate conversation. But also the ethnic minorities, you know, the Kurds, the Baluchis, the Arabs, all of these populations. But since Mahsa Amini, and then again since January 8th and 9th, there has been such a recognition of widespread persecution and widespread suffering that I think that I cannot tell you one group is more compromised than others. I think that right now, anyone in Iran is vulnerable. Anyone in Iran is suffering. They're either suffering from hunger because of the awful economy, or they're suffering because they have lost a loved one to the massacre. They have lost loved ones to the executions. They have people who are in detention and they cannot speak out for them. These issues, these arbitrary detentions and killings and executions used to be primarily a problem that disproportionately affected the minorities. But now all of the Iranians are sharing this incredible tension, this incredible darkness of persecution. And I really have to tell you that the Iranian people are united among the common suffering and pain that they're experiencing, and they don't see those differences across languages or religious lines anymore. People of Iran are united, despite what the media wants to propagate with their own theatrics.
Very nice. I guess trying to think of the future, if the IRGC were to fall shortly, what do you think the first year would look like for a free Iran?
So that's a super important question because, again, in our short attention span here in America, we want to see a quick turnaround. We want to say, okay, so you know what, this happened, so how come we don't see the result? Or that happened, how come we don't see the result? People are going to want immediate gratification and immediate turn of events. And I think that's an unfair and unrealistic expectation. I think that even after we have the moment of free election in Iran, we are going to need time for recovery. Iran is a country that has experienced 47 years of trauma and belittlement and injuries to the soul and to the bodies of its people, and even to the environment of the country. It will take time until there is recovery, and we need to be patient. You know, it's like asking, okay, if there was a ceasefire with Russia and Ukraine, how quickly would everything be fixed? No, it's going to take time. It's going to take time for the Ukrainians to recover. Even after October 7th, Israeli people have still yet to really recover from the impact, from the trauma of what happened. So we need to be patient, but I think what gives me assurance is that Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi has created a team and a plan for day one of freedom. That it would be a moment, it would be a process of taking peaceful control of the reins and helping the country run as well as it can under the circumstances, in order to prevent Syria-like levels of chaos should something were to be changed. In addition, I think that there are many other brilliant activists and innovators who have initiated other ways to help lay the groundwork and support the Iranian people even now. I'm involved with one of the projects. It's called Project Aftab, that helps to send assistance, financial assistance directly to the Iranian people, bypassing IRGC and other bad elements, so that the Iranian people can begin recovering from the losses. But it will take time, and we should continue to see the Iran as a potential ally and support the people, not the government.
100%. I will say, I feel like Iranians have been such strong allies of us Jewish people, in the last 3 years. And I'm sure it goes back even farther than that. I've just been aware of it since, 10/7. And so I know I feel so, as an American Jew, powerless to help the Iranian people. What can people outside of Iran do to advocate and help, the Iranian people?
Shayna, I gotta say that what you're doing right now is so meaningful, and I'm so honored to be on your show and to be able to reflect some of my perspectives about what's happening in the country. But what needs to happen is that more people with a platform should use it and should echo the voices of Iranian people, and it could be in any way. If you have a newsletter, invite Iranian people to write for you. If you have a podcast, invite them to come to your show. If you're a reporter, engage with Iranian sources about their perspectives, and I think you would be surprised. I have a friend who's an entrepreneur. He's an American entrepreneur. He had never really been, engaged with these issues. He came from a pro-America, pro-Israel, pro-democracy standpoint. And he wanted to, after January 8th, he wanted to just send a message of solidarity. So he recorded a message of solidarity and he translated it to Persian. And Iranian people just outpoured their support and appreciation for him. If you want, by the way, to have great social media, engagement, tweet in Persian and see what happens. They love it. They love their allies abroad. So please just be their voice and reflect and put pressure on our elected officials to not capitulate to these people and not believe them. Not believe this government that lies and deceives and commits crimes.
Yes, I have to say, I actually have made posts completely in Persian, made art that had Persian in it. And whenever I do, I completely agree. Like, all my Persian friends on social media just love it, And so I wanted to say that's completely true.
Yeah, I looked at my analytics, and it says like where the majority of people are viewing your page, and 7% are in Iran, and I'm so excited about that. And spreading the message and their voice is so important. So
that's with internet filtering, and that's still with internet filtering that they're able to see it, and they're still able to give you that love.
Yeah, I remember, but prior to the internet going down, it was similar to me. I had made a sticker that said "Big in Iran" because I think it was like 30% of my viewership was coming from Iran. And that's when I was heavily making, Farsi content and stuff like that to really honor and speak to the people directly.
Thank you for doing that.
No worries. And thank you so much for coming on our show today. I want to say it's been really a pleasure speaking to you firsthand. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared today with us.
And thank you for the opportunity. Honestly, I was so heartbroken and so upset by the death of Lindsey Graham, and I needed to talk to somebody about it who would really understand. So thank you for this opportunity. And God bless you. God bless America. Am Yisrael Thrive.
Yes, God bless America. Am Yisrael Thrive. God bless Iran. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Iran.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Have a wonderful week out there, you guys. Shavua Tov. We will see you next Sunday on Am Yisrael Thrive.